Well, hello everybody. My name is Cecilia Guilford, as Anil mentioned. And I'm a bit of a red herring today because I do not come from the energy side. I'm not an energy entrepreneur, nor am I an engineer. I work on catalyzing open innovation ecosystems and leveraging information and communication technologies for international development at the World Bank. But I do hope that the points I'll raise and the ideas I'll introduce today will add value to this discussion as well. And so what I would like to talk to you about today and start a conversation really with you on what an open innovation competition could look like in Nepal to address aspects of the rural electrification problem. And so we've heard a lot about the issue of rural electrification and electrification in general today. I do not need to tell you about this. You're probably much more of an expert than I am. But you probably all experienced firsthand, at some point or another, the difficulties that the lack of 24/7 access to electricity can mean. And rural Nepal is even, worse hit than the urban areas, which are also affected. And often we don't have enough data to really understand aspects and subsets of this problem to be able to more effectively address it. So as a result, Nepal is actually losing its share of electrified households. And so we at the World Bank, we traditionally engage through larger projects with, primarily through the government and with the government or technical assistance, and large private sector players through, large contracts and so forth. And so at the bank, we wanted to experiment with a different way of doing things, engaging different communities, a more diverse set of actors in the way we try to solve problems. And so we try to look at open innovation and also leverage information and communication technologies that are experiencing a revolution over the past few years to see how we could address developmental challenges. And in particular, we try to look at this in a competition setting. And so these different actors, the government, the private sector, the players we talked about, but civic technologists, aspiring entrepreneurs, academia, students who have a project in mind to address problems that their own communities are facing, are all extremely relevant, and we bring them to the table together. And to share ideas, bring their different perspectives on how to solve these issues, to come up with concepts and solutions together and share the reward and the risk. And so, there are certain tools that they can leverage for this process. I mentioned information and communication technologies. Some of you are from India. You know that there are over 1 billion mobile phone subscriptions in India. Nepal has over 70% mobile penetration. And generally in the world, more people have access to a mobile phone than to a toilet. We also saw in Stuart's presentation a bit about geospatial aspects and how those can be applied. Geospatial technology is becoming increasingly affordable. Web 1.2 is expanding. There's social media, open source software, and basically a repository of a set of public resources, public goods that can be leveraged. And increasingly, software innovation, hardware innovation are coming together, and we're seeing that everything is connected. And we saw, a few examples of this in the presentations as well. And so also having, access to publicly available data in an extractable format that everyone can, contribute to, could play around with to better understand, to build innovative applications on top of, to make it more consumable so we really understand what that data actually means. And so, there are, I mentioned these actors, the process and the tools, but really the principles that we try to adhere to when we sort of think about designing open innovation processes and challenges is that the product needs to be, user-centered, that really the problem itself, understanding the problem and those that are affected by it, those are the key stakeholders to it, being at the center of the design. That the tools, the products have to be open. They have to go through a lean and agile and participatory process and be able to be, they have to be designed to be reused, to be shared. They be data-driven to ensure sustainability and scalability, and to really, allow us to fail forward. I think some of our booklets say that, if you never made a mistake, then you never made anything, and I think that's a very important perspective to bring here. And so, this is a graph from the D School at Stanford, and it tries to explain a little bit key steps in the process, such as I mentioned, really understanding the challenge, the problem, refining it, defining it, and prioritizing it, and really understanding those that are facing the problem and bringing them to the table in order to solve it with these other different actors that I mentioned, and really inspire these actors to come together by explaining to them what this issue means, and bringing them together through an ideation process whereby they can come up with concepts together, proof of concepts, and iterate, reiterate. And in a competition format, we would usually filter through these and select those that are the most promising and assist them in various ways, particularly for mentorship, to move towards prototyping and testing and then reiterating and so forth. So Nepal itself has seen a number of open innovation challenges, primarily through the format of a hackathon. For those of you who are less familiar with what a hackathon is, it basically involves a longer process whereby different actors are brought together to really source, identify, prioritize, refine critical problems, and engage unusual partners, the technology community, to work with them on coming up proofs of concept, and which usually culminates in a 2-day event whereby there's a marathon of hacking, so forth. So that's where the name comes from. And Nepal, as I mentioned, had a few of these in the recent past, such as fighting violence against women, Open Nepal, the mobile micro-work challenge, and I think some of those who are core to these initiatives we're lucky to have with us today, such as Open Innovation, so I encourage you to also talk to them. The World Bank itself, as I mentioned, has experimented with this different approach. This is the Global Water Hackathon that we organized a few years ago, where we really managed to engage a diverse set of actors around coming together to solve challenges of water resource management and sanitation. And, it was great to see that diversity around the world, and more than 50%, more than 60% of the participants continued to work on these concepts beyond the hackathon. However, we had difficulties in tracking how these evolved. These are more ad hoc, and we weren't really able to, in a position most of the time, to help them evolve towards a more viable product. So we tried to reiterate the process, and in the Cairo Transport App Challenge that focused on the pressing traffic challenge of Cairo, we introduced the Hack at Home period, whereby moving from the concept, we provided mentorship and support to develop those concepts into working prototypes and come together during the 2-month period, and then select the top participants, the top teams in an event where they received sort of smaller cash rewards and recognition, and really got to connect to a range of investors and larger tech companies and the key stakeholders themselves. The Sanitation Hackathon and App Challenge that was also a global initiative to address sanitation issues around the world, went further and actually collected these applications in a repository that is shared, where you can actually go back and look at these ideas and concepts and code and try to reuse it, work on it, and so forth, and also help you to track what's actually happening with these projects over time. We recently had a civic hackathon in Peshawar as well, which was actually focused on pressing civic challenges in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the government was a very key stakeholder here. And in terms of assisting the evolution and the continuation of these proofs of concepts into viable products and prototypes, this initiative introduced civic fellows. So fellows who were embedded in the government after the hackathon itself to continue working together with the government on testing, prototyping, and introducing new tools whereby the government can improve its public service delivery. Obviously, hackathons are not the only, and app challenges are not the only sort of processes that are applied for open innovation challenges. Makeathons, the maker movement, and as I mentioned, through the Internet of Things, there's an interesting convergence here. And the energy sector is also not new to experimenting with these different approaches, but the private sector, as well as government and academia, leading different initiatives. Some of it, talking about the data, the open data, and building on that data to really analyze information in a way that it becomes a lot more consumable and understandable to the primary consumer or the energy supplier. GE actually had an Eco-Imagination Challenge where they invited proposals leveraging 3D printing. And so a lot of these innovations come from emerging markets, and a lot of them, as we have seen today, come from actually this region. So it's a very exciting momentum here that I think is very interesting to take into account. This is, for instance, innovation from India for Nokia's Calling All Innovators contest, which basically utilizes mobile phone service to remotely check electricity. And so the lessons we learned, and as these processes evolved in the way we experimented with them, is to really co-create the process with our primary stakeholders, our primary audience, to really invest in identifying, prioritizing, refining problems, to understand the data needs and what is it that we can share and leverage and contribute to really aim to share and reuse and customize what's already out there, to connect different communities within the local setting as well as globally who are working on similar issues, to really build an existing infrastructure instead of bringing in a white elephant into the room, so to speak, to ensure interoperability, to provide mentorship and support so we can evolve from a conceptual phase and to really think beyond the hackathon and see how we can track the evolution of the collaborations that are born out of these processes as well as the products. And so just bringing you back to the problem itself and that we were talking about rural electrification, that we've talked about rural microgrids that are one way to expand electrification in rural areas and to rural communities. So I would like to all of you to think about the critical problems around rural electrification and also how especially at today's rich examples and others, how we could solve these through an open innovation contest. So, for instance, how can we better monitor issues of maintenance, more real time for a quicker response? How can we, utilize mobile billing and other mechanisms for a more effective payment system so that revenue streams can be smoother and service can become more affordable or easily to manage? How can we connect more real-time data to inform policymakers? And how can we, get real-time information to better track track demand for load management and so forth? So I really would like you all to think about, critical problems that you've come across, that you're facing, that you're seeing in your business, and also think about, what this challenge design, this contest could look like here. What you'd want to see, where you think the gaps might be in terms of capacity, in terms of the problem sets, and so forth. What should be the process to get the kind of product and collaboration that you're hoping to see, and whether you'd be interested to partner to such an initiative. So I really want to hear from you. I know that we might have tight timing now for questions, but I will be at the speed dating, and to contradict Anil's point originally that we're vendors and to sell ideas, I'd actually be really interested to hear your ideas. So I'm really hoping that we'll get to have a conversation, and I really hope that we'll get to work together. Thank you.